Yeah.
Hi, Alexey.
Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And you?
Let me I can't complain. I won't complain anyway.
Okay.
I'll introduce us though. I'm Robert Wright of Blogging Heads TV. You are Alexey Sidorenko. This is an episode of Worldwise, in which we typically talk to someone who's in a country other than the United States, which is certainly true of you. You are now in Warsaw, although you were born in Moscow, and we're going to talk a little about both Poland and Russia. And we should say that you are a blogger. And are you still doing graduate work there in Warsaw as well?
No. I kind of finished it long ago. So right now I'm blogging. I also managing the project of helping Russian NGOs in Russia. Apparently. So this is pretty much what I do.
Okay. Well, let's start with Poland. There's been some concern about Vladimir Putin over the last few months, I guess you could say, and how large his territorial ambitions are. You occasionally, you do hear fears here in the United States that he might actually invade even a member of NATO, which is something he's never done. And Poland is a member of NATO. Is that concern shared in Poland?
Well, what I can hear, and obviously, I can hear what I can hear out of the radio, out of the media. Yes, I think there is a concern. The radio I'm usually listening to every morning. I guess since all these events, I regularly hear discussions and with high level officials on this radio about, whether Poland should buy more ammunitions, more arms. So how long it would be enough to stay against the Russian or Belarusian tanks and things like this. Whether the NATO allies are going to help or not. There is not 100%. Let's say. Not 100% awareness that the allies will help, and this is probably definitely a certain it provides a certain fear, and there is lots of old historical memories that are triggered by what's happening in Ukraine, and of course, every country, whether we are speaking about Poland or we are speaking about the Baltic countries, all the population and the political elites are extremely concerned. There is a lot of let's say fear, uncertainty, and agitation, to do something about it. So yes, what is happening in Ukraine, provides the horror for the whole region, which is very bad. Which is,
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, the big distinction being that Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and that's also true of Putin's other kind of military adventure beyond the bounds of Russia. In the Georgia thing some time ago. That also didn't involve a member of NATO, and I think the thinking of most people is that he's very aware of the difference between a member of NATO and which the United States and European nations are bound by treaty to defend, and these other countries. But what is your view as somebody who you spent a lot of time in Russia? You were born in Russia. Do you think the fears are overblown, or do you think there's actually some chance that he would invade a member of NATO?
Well, I think I kind of share the overall, let's say, how would I can't even find the word that I would share the concern, definitely, because even though Putin is famous for doing something, with a perspective of many years. So even now, it seems kind of unlikely that he will do this, and he wouldn't do this right away. But he's when we look at anything what happens inside Russia, it puts this way that first he or his friends politicians make the first step, then the second step, and then like finally you appear in the situation where you have no exit, because all the steps, all the positions around are controlled and won by Putin. So of course in the long term this is a very alerting condition, what we can see now. And imagine, like right now it's only part of Ukraine, then it's some new regions, then it's like this corridor to Transnistria and Crimea, and then it's the rest of Ukraine, and then who knows what else. So definitely yes, there is in the long term, there is a lot to worry about.
Yeah, he of course, and he would have to go through Ukraine or Belarus or somewhere to get to Poland, because it's not adjacent to Russia. But I would say he's never.
It is. Kaliningrad region is still around.
Oh, is that is there an actual border between?
Yes, there is.
And Belarus is not. Is that north of Belarus
there is,
or what?
Well, it's. The Kaliningrad region is in between Lithuania and Poland, and
okay.
Yes, there is a big military base, by the way, there.
A big Russian military base.
Yes.
Okay. But I would say Putin is never. He does. He does seem to sometimes engage in kind of risky behavior, but he's never done anything that actually risked a significant military response, by anybody else. We actually made it clear in Ukraine, the West did, that we were not going to go in to defend Ukraine. And he knew that the same was true in Georgia. And basically in both cases, even in America, even the kind of hawks were not really advocating for military intervention. Whereas the situation is very different from NATO. We it's not just the treaty. We have said that we wouldn't put up with it. So I don't know. It seems to me it would be out of character for him to do something kind of that risky. But who knows?
But at the same time, I remember that back in 2001, no one would believe that he would invade Georgia. Then no one would ever believe that Russia would ever invade Ukraine. It all happens. And these kind of a line of what is impossible and what is possible always changes. It's always in transition. I would never believe that, the internet is going to be blocked. But it's like there are a lot of indicators that it might be blocked or isolated from the rest of the network pretty soon. So times are changing.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually wasn't so surprised by the Ukrainian thing. That seemed like the kind of thing he would do and did. But on this issue of the internet in Russia, that brings us to the question of the atmosphere in Russia. And apparently, and actually, one reason I kind of kept saying, before he had actually really conspicuously intervened in Donetsk, in eastern Ukraine, some weeks ago, I was kind of saying, he cannot let those regions fall. Just as a political matter, he's got too much invested politically in Russia to defending the separatists there. So he's going to invade before, he's going to intervene if that's what's necessary to keep the Ukrainian government from regaining control of those regions. And that's what happened. And a striking thing has been how much political support he does have for what he's done in Ukraine, right? The polls have just shown kind of, 90% overwhelming support so far as I know, right? And is that, have you been surprised by this whole business? I know when you and I talked earlier, you were talking about how Putin was kind of rallying the nationalist sentiment in Russia and depicting all forms of dissent and protest as Western inspired. And so what's happened here is consistent with that, right? That's his political move. But have you been surprised by how strong the support for him has been in Russia?
Well, I mean, like, I guess we spoke already when it was these 84% polls. And I think, well, I mean, like, I was definitely surprised back then since we last spoke. Yes, that was a surprise and a very unpleasant surprise to realize that such a big part. And we will need to speak about the numbers here. Yeah, because there was like a number of the critical analysis that show that it's actually not 84%, at least not 84% of full supporters. But yes, there is a significant number of people who seem to be okay, not just okay, but like support the idea of annexation of Crimea, to supporting whoever they call these people in Donetsk and Lugansk. So yes, this is quite surprising, but I think that this is part of political marketing. And I mean, even though at the first time people support this, it's not long-term thing. People get tired of the war, people get tired of the sanctions. So I believe it's not a long-term thing. Yes.
So you think now have you been? When was the last time you were in Russia? By the way,
I was in September. I was for 10 days in the middle of September.
Okay, so you still feel comfortable going there, right? I mean, it's not. You know, I assume that someone of your political persuasion, as I understand it, would not feel especially at home there right now, given the atmosphere. But you don't feel like threatened or anything.
Well, I mean, like when I'm just passing through the border, I don't. But for example, if I would be, like I went there on a anti-war march, and if I would be going back with I don't know, like a Ukrainian flag on me, I would definitely feel insecure.
Yeah.
And simply not just someone beating me, although this might definitely happen, but also simply people accusing me verbally, abusing me verbally, treating me like I'm some kind of a traitor. Yes, I think this is what a lot of my friends are actually meeting in everyday situation when like the shopkeeper starts suddenly to give you a lecture on the Russia's foreign politics.
Do you have both Russian and Polish citizenship or what?
Oh yeah, I do.
You do. So so you were at this this march then. There was some publicity about this. The fairly recent anti-war demonstration?
Yeah, on the, let me see, on the 21st of September.
So opposing the war in Ukraine. And what was that like? Or opposing Russia's involvement? What was that like?
Well, it had these flavor of the early like 2011, 2012 demonstrations, although the number of participants were slightly lower, not even slightly, I mean, like it was, according to the independent commission who counted how many people came, it was 26,000 people, but I felt really well seeing so many people with with Ukrainian flags, with all kinds of transparencies that Putin should leave and stuff. That I'm not alone, and that there are lots of Russians, lots of Muscovites who do not accept the idea of the war with Ukraine, with our one of the closest neighbors. This is like with the number of Russian-speaking population, which is huge, right? Like not all of Ukrainians speak Russian, but like a lot of them do. Like I would argue that more than half. So it's and then fighting with the country. And this sounds crazy, not only to me, I realize, but also to many thousands of Russian very nice people there. It was really, like calm, nice, intelligent Muscovites with a very witty posters. It had this kind of like thing, this fashion of really peaceful gathering of really people who absolutely detest the idea of war.
And was there any harassment of the protesters or anything? Did by either by police or by other people that the police failed to control or anything like that?
No. It was organized. It was organized so, let's say, well that you could feel like yourself like in a short, let's say, in a small zoo where you are the animal actually, so that like everything is set up so no one can hurt you, but at the same time you feel yourself like in a small reservation. You are going and everyone can see, hey, look, these people, like they are bad, they are against the war. And that was a bit, it was absolutely civilized. There were a few groups that were shouting something, but and they were with Georgian stripes, and there were a few demonstrations of supporters of Lugansk Republic and Donetsk Republic, but there was no beating. There were a few provocations reported. I haven't witnessed them. They were reported, but overall it was a very peaceful and kind of organized, although you could still feel that it was not a kind of a spontaneous, but very, very kind of a limited and very restricted event.
And was it widely covered in the Russian media?
Well, Russian media, of course, said that it failed, that there were 5,000 supporters, which, this is the usual thing Russian media say, that it's like, oh, these oppositioners again failed to do something. Mm-hmm. And in fact, they didn't, because 26,000, it's still a lot. Mm-hmm. It's still like something. Of course, it was not 100,000 million march, one could witness in the situation like this in any European city. But it was still a lot for people who are still left, who didn't immigrate, who still think that, who didn't buy the Putin's propaganda.
And are there any plans to follow this up with other anti-war activism?
Well, I'm not aware of any so far.
And are these, by and large, you referred to the protests back in, 2012 or whenever, some people, I think, would view what's happening in Ukraine as, in a certain sense, a reaction to those protests, in the sense that I gather that Putin was kind of frightened by the protests. And I forget the exact issue, but broadly speaking, they were kind of pro-democracy, pro-freedom of expression protests, as I recall. I gather that, and they were certainly not pro-Putin, and I gather that he was kind of alarmed, and some people say that that's one reason he has played the nationalist card so strongly and tried to rally Russians against what he depicts as, a Western threat. So were these people, and if I've got that analysis wrong, or you differ with it, let me know. But my other question is, were the people in the march, the anti-war march, kind of broadly speaking, that just kind of the same kinds of people who would have been in those marches in 2012?
Yes,
demographically?
I would say, first of all, this is part of the story. First of all, Putin has his own authoritarian tendencies, and it's still a matter of time where he will introduce his full authoritarian potential, and he uses outside threats to justify another reforms that actually bring back Russia to the state of the Soviet Union. Whether these threats happen or not, they still happen, and he still does that. And the protests, they gave him a good response, how do you call it, good rationale,
Right.
justification to introduce new measures. And it was not just about the street gatherings, but it was also about the internet, NGOs, anything that actually anyhow empowers people.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is the first, I guess, answer, and the second answer is about the people. Yes, these were the same people, but if we remind, at Sakharov protest there were 120,000, so it was 5 times less. Well, four and a half. So that was also a significant, let's say, change of the situation for the wars.
Mm-hmm.
So that people are frightened. A lot had already emigrated. A lot are thinking of the emigration, sending out their business. The capital is flowing away from Russia. So the dollar is rising. So, yeah.
So you seem to think that these economic pressures will turn the Russian public against Putin's Ukrainian policy?
Well, not sure. Not sure so far. At least not right now. Right now, people believe, oh, we shouldn't, we can eat only kasha, the porridge, and be still a great country, and we don't care about the rest of the world. I'm not sure till how long it can last. And I think that definitely, yes, people get tired. People get tired, and I believe that this would be one of the reasons of much more massive outbreaks. But they're also scared and threatened, constantly threatened. And this also what keeps them not very, let's see, articulate with their political position.
Threatened by what? You mean they feel threatened by the West or threatened by Putin's
by both.
power?
I mean, like the media tell them that they are threatened by the West. At the same time, they're threatened by any kind of law enforcement agencies. There are much more restrictive laws now. What you can do, what you can't do, and especially it matters about the activists. Yeah, I mean, like on both sides.
What's an example of how the laws have gotten more restrictive within, say, the last year or so?
Well, for example, so first of all, I would say that since the last year, I mean, like since 2012, the fine for first of all for the fine for the violations during the mass street events. The first one, then the law against the NGOs, the foreign agent NGO law, which now actually made any NGO being very paranoid about any foreign funding. And there are like presidential grants for NGOs, and they do not appreciate any kind of a, let's say, activity that is for transparency or accountability of the government, and of course no advocacy whatsoever. So you can't file a grant to run some anti-war advocacy campaign. So this is when it comes to media. There is now there was a certain purge in the editorial offices of the media, and it was not with the law made with the laws, but with the with all kinds of tools. Of pressure of the owners of the media and so on. But also right now, what they're discussing is limiting foreign ownership of the media, of a print media. So this gets more restrictive. Also, people who have double citizenship need to report themselves. And there are all kinds of speculations that the next step would be that people with double ownership or even with the green card or whatever wouldn't be able to be at the NGOs or any. Well, they already can't do anything with a official with of occupying official post, which is pretty normal. But when it comes to non-governmental sector, it's really discriminational. There were the recent case against Yevtushenkov, a really big, we can call him oligarch, where he was just arrested for a few hours until he would give up a part of his company that he acquired in the 2000s. I mean, like, that gave a sign to other business owners in Russia, right now there are no rules. And I mean, like, or there are new rules where, like, the government can actually arrest you for anything until they get anything they want. So, I mean, like, there is a number of things, that happen all the time. For example, if you're not sure if you remember, there was the case where a Ukrainian roofer, Mustang Wanted, painted one of the stars at Moscow Vysotkas into the colors of Ukrainian flag. So he escaped, and he is now sent to the international search warrant. Not search warrant, but he's wanted by Interpol. And
that was the thing. That was the star on top of the building or something.
Yes. So, but at the same time,
technically it was vandalism. In the United States, that would technically be called vandalism. That wouldn't be legal in the United States either, I have to say. But I'm sure that it's not the vandalism aspect that is the reason they're so determined to get him.
It's not about him. Even though he confessed that he did it, there are still 2 people in custody that are facing 7 years of prison. They are innocent. So, because, these Mustang Wanted already had recognized that he did it alone. So, and they're still kept in custody. So this sends a clear message that, we can jail you for any time without any reason. And like, just because you were like passing by.
Meanwhile, you mentioned oligarchs. Meanwhile, this other oligarch, whose name I forget, the most famously persecuted oligarch from some years back, who finally just left Russia, right? He was a rival to Putin. Now, I think he's the one who is now deciding to become a little bit of an anti-Putin activist, although I think hasn't yet set foot in Russia to do that. But he's kind of trying to rally some opposition, right?
Well, it's not that he's trying. So far, what he said that he's ready to run for the president, but he doesn't set up any party. What he does, he reopened the Open Russia movement, and at the same time, and already, as soon as he opened it, all the lectures that were sponsored by the Open Russia movement were cancelled or were made impossible to pass. So this also, it was just yesterday's news. In several towns when they were planned, all the organizers had already told, and these were like absolutely non-political. They were civic, for example, about critical thinking, about the concept of evil and stuff. They were considered as political, and the organizers said they didn't want to host these lectures.
So things are pretty repressive.
Yes.
Do you notice when you were in Russia in September, did you notice the effects of the sanctions? I mean, could you look around and see, well, it used to be that you could buy this food and this food and this food, and now you can't? I mean, is it that evident?
I didn't go to shops much, I should say, but... Well, I've seen the reports. I kind of, definitely you can feel that there is less foreign products out there. Yeah, you can, like, when you are going to to your friends, to there are all these kinds of jokes. So like, oh, we've managed to get the last package of French cheese and stuff, and of course it concerns like a pretty small part of the population, but it's still, you can feel that something that you can never believe would happen is happening.
Yeah, and some of this is not a result of the sanctions per se, but the result of Putin's countermeasures. He retaliated by banning the import of certain farm products from the European Union, which includes Poland, right?
Not only European Union, but also United States, Canada, other countries in the world, Japan.
Yeah. And I don't know, is Poland in the European Union actually? But in any event, Poland was affected.
It is.
That and I guess such is the popular support for Putin that people pretty much accepted his decision to constrain their kind of dining options. Is that effect being felt in Poland? I mean, are farmers kind of suffering because they don't have a place to export their food?
Well, yes, the economy can feel it, and also, I mean, like that was a really smart move by Putin, because right now what is happening is that all over Europe there are like farm producers, people not very politically educated, let's say, who do not blame Putin. They blame their own politicians, and and what he did actually with these sanctions, he made unhappy the elite that is not, like, or let's say privileged groups that do not necessarily like Putin himself, and also he alienated European farmers to their own political elites. But like I hope European farmers understand the situation, and so they do not feel completely egoistic about their losses in this thing and who is the blame here. But the funny thing, there are also nice creative ways. For example, here in Poland, when the apples were banned, so there was this campaign that eat apples in spite of Putin. You would be able to meet apples everywhere.
So Polish people are walking around eating Polish apples to support Polish farmers.
Yes, that was a massive campaign, to support Polish farmers.
Did you notice it? Did you actually notice people walking around eating apples?
Well, not walking around, but for example, to every organization where you would go, like to local NGOs or to the hotel, you would see baskets full of apples. That was pretty massive, I would say. Like to any persons, there were the production of cider increased. There were started even the talks about the considering cider not an alcoholic drink, so that more people would drink it.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
And I guess this provided real relief for Polish farmers, huh?
Well, not sure. I mean, still, that was. I mean, like Russian market was a big one.
Yeah.
So, but I think, I mean, like there are some options. One of my friends didn't even wanted to make a business, like to buy the equipment to make apple juice and to sell it to Scandinavian countries, branded as Freedom Apple.
Yeah, well, reminiscent of Freedom Fries in the United States, with a somewhat different context. I don't know if you remember that, but that was different. That was a reaction against the French for not supporting the 2003 Iraq War. Okay, so we got cut off there, Alexey, but we're about to wrap up anyway. I mean, just in summary, I guess it sounds like it's going to be a while before, even with the pressure of the sanctions and so on, it's going to be a while before the Russian people turn on Putin in a big way, at least the way it looks now. So it's going to be, sounds like it's kind of a long haul for people of your political persuasion. Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Well, I think that the most important thing for the American audience here is that it's really what is happening here is very dangerous for Europe, and it's not just some local Russian-Ukrainian conflict. At least it's not perceived as is in the Central and Eastern Europe. It's a big thing, and it sounds and seems like the history repeating. So, and I think that it would be really good if it would really help the countries in the West if it would be realized this way as well.
Yeah, and I mean they have. I think the West has tried to reinforce the idea that we will stand by members of NATO like Poland and the Baltic states. But yeah, but I'm sure your sentiment is widely shared, certainly where you are in Poland right now. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Alexey, and maybe we'll check back in with you down the road and see how things are.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.